Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today we're diving into the shocking story of Clint Eastwood discloses who he is at 94. Doesn't desire his Clinton was the birthplace of funeral Clint Eastwood. Eastwood Jr. in San Francisco on May 31, 1930 Francisco, California is a legendary figure. American film star whose career covers more than 70 years and was raised during the Great Depression. A small household that moves around a lot because to his father's steelworker job these early experiences were beneficial. Establish his tough individuality and labor moral qualities that will eventually develop distinguishing features of his on-screen persona and individual philosophy. Following graduating from Oakland High School, he worked at a number of jobs, including lifeguard and gas station for lumberjacks prior to being recruited during the Korean War. The U.S. Army in the armed forces not only developed his discipline, but also gave him access to the film industry when he first started hanging around with budding filmmakers and performers. While assigned to Fort or Eastwood's Hollywood debut was coincidental but distinguished by tenacity, he started his acting career in the 1950s with little, frequently unattributed parts in the B films, and his debut occurred when he was cast in the late 1950s as Rowdy Yates in the well-known TV western Rawhide, but at first seen as a supporting character. Eastwood's austere demeanor and charm made him a fan favorite very fast. Visibility made it possible for him to ascend to a global celebrity in the 1960s, especially through his enduring roles in the Dollars trilogy by Sergio Leone, A Fistful of $1,964 for a Couple Extra Dollars, The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. In 1965, these spaghetti westerns from 1966 transformed the western genre and presented the trademark of Eastwood. Character of the ethically ambiguous and laconic, an antagonist with a searing stare and little conversation. As his acting career bloomed, Eastwood came to represent with stoic resilience and rugged masculinity regarding justice on the frontier. In the 1970s, he strengthened his reputation as a cultural figure, depicting Filthy Harry Callahan as a rugged, unflappable San Francisco police officer who became a representation of American law and fortitude. Enforcement in a period when societal disturbing. The 1971 movie Dirty Harry and the public was captivated by its successors' imagination and action. Social remarks as well as Eastwood's grawly intensity that these parts displayed not just his talent as an actor, but also his comprehension of the zeitgeist that is enticing to viewers demoralized by but increasing crime and bureaucracy. Eastwood wasn't satisfied with staying in just in front of the camera. He made a effective shift to guiding play. Misty for Me is the first song in a psychological thriller from 1971 that shone his brilliant storytelling abilities and creative vision across the Eastwood established a reputation over decades as a brilliant producer and director, commended for his frugal shooting style, emotional control, and the capacity to elicit strong performances from his actors, in which he starred and directed a number of highly regarded films. Included 1992's Unforgiven, which brought him Academy Awards for Best Director and Finest Image, solidifying his position among the tremendous aura of contemporary film. Unforgiven provided a critical perspective on the mythos as being challenged by the Western genre. Eastwood himself had contributed to the construction of and displaying a more morally thoughtful, intricate story, and his range as a director is noteworthy. From moving dramas such as the 2004 film $1 Million Baby made, he received his second Oscars, to historical and biographical movies like As Yuma's Letters 2008, American Sniper 2006, Gran Torino, Richard Jewell in 2014. And in 2019, Eastwood has continuously investigated themes of identity, redemption and heroism, and the American observes his capacity to address stories that are profoundly human. With he has gained respect and nuance. Praise from viewers and reviewers. Similar to numerous Hollywood celebrities, Eastwood has remained in charge of the creative process over his projects, frequently collaborating with tight shooting and tight budget schedules, receiving praise for his professionalism, effectiveness, and creativity. Integrity beyond what he has contributed to. Clint Eastwood has directed a multifaceted existence that involves periods as a politician, businessman, and composer a fervent fan of jazz, he has created the soundtrack for a number of his movies and supported jazz performers all through in his 1986 to 1988 career. He served as the mayor of California's Carmel by the Sea, demonstrating his enthusiasm for civic participation and local administration, and he has actually been active in business. Estate Eateries, as well as a prosperous Mal Paso Productions, a production company which has generated most of his movies since the December 19, 1970s. In 1953, Clint Eastwood started his first union with Margaret Neville. Maggie Johnson is a secretary and model. He met her on a blind date set up by Eastwood's pals at the time were still a budding actress with limited acting experience. His name and their partnership served as the start of a decades-long partnership that would include both Eastwood's ascent to global renown as well as several personal ups and downs. Marriage endured many hardships, encompassing Eastwood's protracted absences throughout filming and his romantic reputation. Relationships outside of marriage. Maggie, however, stayed with Eastwood during the crucial early years in which he performed, including his breakthrough performance in the TV show Rawhide and his later achievements with the Dollars trilogy by Sergio Leone of westerns with spaghetti. In the Eastwood and Maggie shared the 1960s. Kyle Eastwood, one of their two children, was 1968 born, someone who will later become a renowned composer and jazz musician, composing music for a number of his. Their daughter Allison watches their father's movies. Eastwood was born in 1972, carried on her father's legacy into the entertainment sector as a fashion model, actor, and filmmaker. Allison made appearances in a number of Clint's movies such as Tightrope 1984 and The Garden of Good and Evil at Midnight 1997, and she went on to helm the film The Movie Rails and Ties 2007. In spite of their common past and offspring from the marriage of Eastwood and Johnson reportedly becoming more tense because of his affairs outside of marriage and an increasing emotional separation between the two following years apart, and rumors that they got a divorce in the divorce settlement in 1984 was important, illustrating Eastwood's increasing affluence and prestige. By 1984, that Johnson is said to have had got between $25 million and $30 million, which garnered media attention as one of some of Hollywood's largest settlements. Years later, Eastwood got married once more, this time to Dina Ruiz. Over 30 years as a television news anchor, years his junior, they initially crossed paths when Ruiz was tasked with conducting an interview in 1993 for a segment on Unforgiven, Eastwood, a well-regarded Western that took home. He won 2 Academy Awards for Best Director and the finest film. A business meeting quickly emerged into a private connection, and on March 31, 1996, the couple got married in a private event hosted at Clint's property in California's Carmel by the Sea, where he had additionally held the office of mayor. In the 1980s, Eastwood and Ruiz welcomed the birth of Morgan Eastwood, a daughter. December 1996. In contrast to some of Eastwood's other kids, Morgan has mostly avoided the spotlight, despite the fact that she made sporadic appearances with her parents on the 2012 reality show Display the Mrs. Eastwood and Company that highlighted Dina's life and included her family members. In spite her attempts to provide a consistent public picture of the marriage failed, and in August 2013, Ruiz made it known that the pair had been living apart. The divorce was finalized for a while. 2014, which marked the conclusion of Eastwood's second official marriage in his. Clint Eastwood's life has been known to only for his well-known movie roles and accomplishments as a director, but also for, in particular, his complicated personal life, his children and relationships. In addition to Morgan and Kyle Allison, it is known that Eastwood fathered at least 5 additional kids with different, despite the fact that he has never publicly verified the total number of his. Kimberlin is one of their offspring. Born in 1964, Eastwood comes from a previous connection to Roxanne Tunis, a dancer, and born in 1986. Scott Eastwood has established a prosperous acting career of his own and is quite similar to his father in both on-screen persona and appearance. Other known children of Eastwood include Francesca Eastwood, Catherine Reeves, and the latter of whom was Laurie Murray. taken in by a different family, and only thereafter re-established contact with her father. Despite has a sizable and occasionally Eastwood's familial situation is complex. Mostly avoided going into much detail in their speech. Regarding his private connections or kids in public who would rather preserve a certain amount of privacy, however, his numerous children have appeared alongside him on occasion at events. Implying continued connections with many of them. The enigma surrounding his precise child count and his relationship timeline has only added to the mysterious public of Eastwood picture that supports his identity as even off-screen. He is a reserved man of few words. Clint Eastwood discloses who he is at 94. Does not want to attend his funeral right now. Tall, 94-year-old, renowned actor and Clint Eastwood, the director, has invested more than 70 years creating one of the Hollywood's most formidable careers history, beginning when he was a laconic rancher on rawhide to his renowned parts in spaghetti westerns by Sergio Leone and his subsequent transformation into a master director of movies such as Unforgiven, $1 Million Gran Torino and Baby. Eastwood has come to represent tough old school and individualistic masculinity ideals as he gets closer to the sunset of Eastwood's life has become into considering his legacy more and more his values, the individuals he desires, and refuses to pay tribute to him after he passes away. In an open moment, Eastwood allegedly revealed a startling list of individuals he hopes won't go to his funeral because years of personal conflicts over ideologies, complaints, or profound philosophical distinctions between those he listed: Tom Hanks and John Wayne, Leonardo DiCaprio, Michael Moore, Sandre, and Spike Lee. John Locke Wayne. Even if Wayne and Eastwood are imposing characters in American film, particularly in the Western genre, their relationship was infamously tense. According to reports, Wayne didn't like the ethical inconsistent characteristics Eastwood frequently depicted, especially in movies like Wayne believed that the High Plains Drifter tarnished the American nobility. Once, Wayne received a script from Cowboy Eastwood, wishing to work together, but Wayne rejected it, claiming that the movie was perverse and failed to demonstrate the bravery he thought it was necessary to define the Western. Despite being considerate of Wayne's legacy, thought the Duke was outdated. With the more intricate and practical tales he wished to share with Wayne, Eastwood is believed to have died around 1979. Stated that if Wayne could somehow, he would prefer that you attend his funeral. Avoided representing the ideological the distance that separated them from the Leonardo's end. Although both men have collaborated with DiCaprio, Martin Scorsese, and have won an Oscar. Independent powerhouses. Clint. According to reports, Eastwood discovers DiCaprio's vocal climate advocacy and political positions, evaluating Eastwood, who has a lengthy known as a libertarian who once conservatives criticized Hollywood's elites for being too politically correct and fixated on DiCaprio's virtue signaling, is renowned for his prominent remarks about the environment at his private jet and the United Nations travel that is criticized for being hypocritical. Symbolizes to Eastwood the type of he has become a Hollywood hypocrite. Becoming tired of. Despite leading in J. Edgar, 2011, DiCaprio plays Eastwood. Thought to see him as representative of a Hollywood's younger generation, no longer recognizes or honors Tom Hanks as one of. Tom Hanks is one of America's most adored actors. Is frequently seen as a healthy and all-American character, but Eastwood, and despite their collaboration in Sully, Hanks' 2016 is said to be a very different year. Eastwood is renowned for his views, his predilection and his no-nonsense attitude for quick filming and few take schedules, but Hanks is renowned for cooperative and politically astute. As an outspoken Democrat, Hanks has supported politicians and causes Eastwood has criticized more than politics. But perhaps Eastwood sensed that Hanks' public perception as the father of America doesn't sit more well with his own grittier, doubtful perception of American culture and establishments. The fact that Hanks attended his funeral, claimed to have said, would feel out of harmony with the harsh realities of his life. He love never dies, says led Spike Lee. Between Spike Lee, the director, and Eastwood, who in 2008 openly chastised Eastwood, flags of our fathers, one of his war films and Uema's letters accusing him of excluding black soldiers from Eastwood representations of World War II responded by claiming that historical those castings had been determined by accuracy decisions and said Lee had stopped talking. Instead of stirring needlessly dispute, the argument became heated, and garnered public attention and became uncommon conflict between two senior directors in public Eastwood, who dislikes and values control. According to reports, Lee is being questioned as a contentious individual whose presence would serve as a sort of theatrical activism for which Eastwood lacks tolerance for. Michael Moore is arguably the most dependable addition to Eastwood's fictitious. Michael Moore and Eastwood's no-show list have already engaged in direct conflict, and Moore critiqued Eastwood's work in 2005. U.S. Sniper for promoting violence and advocating for a jingoistic perspective on war. In response, Eastwood once stated that if someone ever approached him with a camera, he'd murder him, a statement he subsequently asserted was stated in a fair manner, but one that exposed the degree of their hostility. Moore's brazen documentary-style filmmaking, in addition to his intense anti-war and anti-gun positions, stand in stark contrast to Eastwood's Second Amendment protections for American soldiers' rights and the notion of individualist values of Moore giving praises or eulogies. Eastwood is said to have attended his funeral. Said would be the height of irony. What Sandre Lockcatch felt most strongly. The list's charged name is definitely the former partner of Sandre Lockcatch, Eastwood loving partner and regular co-star. The two had a profoundly complex 14-year partnership that concluded in an acrimonious and public court case. Eastwood was charged by Battle Lock with sabotage of a career and emotional abuse, bringing many lawsuits against him that continued for years as Eastwood resolved the dispute outside of court between. Despite Lock's death, they never recovered. Eastwood has apparently been away since 2018. Declared that if there was a way to, he would send ghosts to haunt the living. I hope Lockcatch doesn't follow him around. Final rights to be there, he thought, would raise an excessive number of unsolved feelings and serve as a reminder of an unpleasant period in his life that he would rather Clint, to be buried at the conclusion. Eastwood's independence is still fierce. As unrepentant as ever as he approaches the after a long and illustrious life, his ideas regarding legacy, loyalty and integrity are still directed by the same values that made him the fictitious funeral of a Hollywood icon. Apparently, it would be more than simply a party of a profession, but also a last deed of establishing distinct boundaries between those he esteemed, as well as those he. Clint Eastwood hasn't been particularly committed to exercise and wellness since his adolescent years, becoming a disciplined way of living that would continue, a characteristic that has defined his lengthy and a prosperous career. Even as a young man, Eastwood had a reputation for having outstanding physical training that favors consistent long-term exercise and a balanced diet. Prior to such practices becoming popular in Hollywood's dedication to health contrasted sharply with the usual heavy partying is a stereotype that many emerging performers of his the late 1950s generation, and when playing the role of Rowdy in the early 1960s Yates on the popular Western television show Rawhide, Eastwood's toned body and his neat appearance won him significant attention, not only from fitness enthusiasts as well as fans and medical journals. His body turned become a subject of public curiosity, and he was regularly published in magazines and publications that addressed health, and one such characteristic is personal well-being. Showed up in TV's August 1959 edition. Point out, where Eastwood was noticeable pictured doing push-ups, demonstrating his athletic prowess and the everyday self-control that drove it. In addition to the images, Eastwood offered useful workout tips that are based on in his own routine. He promoted readers to accept a natural balanced diet that highlights the significance of eating a lot of fresh. He was also a fruit and raw vegetable strong advocate for taking vitamins to enhance dietary intake, and suggested that people avoid too much sugar, especially sugary drinks such as Coke, which he thought helped cause energy crashes and chronic health issues. In addition to, Eastwood cautioned against the excessive intake of carbs and discouraged regular alcohol consumption, particularly when he is focused on moderation, health prevention, and the concept of functional fitness predicted the decades ahead of the current wellness movement of its widespread approval. Eastwood's health-conscious attitude grew even more determined after a very personal tragedy, the untimely passing of his Clint Eastwood Sr.'s father from a heart attack at age 64 in 1970. Eastwood's description of the incident: Fritz, a longtime friend and partner, the one negative thing that ever occurred in his life. Eastwood was surprised by this unexpected setback. Particularly given his father's grandfather was well into his 90s. The difference between his dad's early death and the longevity of his grandfather left a deep impression on him, but it wasn't only strengthened Eastwood's resolve to healthy lifestyle, but also appeared to initiate a change in his career perspective going forward. Eastwood became notably more motivated and diligently working on his movie initiatives with more urgency and accuracy, for which he gained a reputation. Shooting frequently with efficiency and speed, completing productions far in advance of his discipline, keeps him on track and within budget. On location reflected the constancy of his personal behaviors that reveal a man committed to making the most of his time and his vitality. Interestingly, even though he abstained, avoid heavy booze and staying away from binge drinking, Eastwood showed a respect for societal areas and society by co-establishing the bar Hog's Breath Inn, is situated in the charming seaside community of Carmel. By the 1971 California, the facility was planned with a whole rustic English-style atmosphere. Featuring inside wood paneling and a comfortable calm setting, it swiftly turned into a tourist's patronize this local favorite. And locals alike, and served as evidence of Eastwood's business acumen, passion and fondness for the Carmel.